श्री रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश भगवान की जय। श्री गौर निताय भगवान की। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की। श्रील प्रभुपाद की। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोदरक्षि श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस शिल अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत गोस्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की। इस्कॉन विपट संस्थापकाचार्य शिल प्रभुपाद की। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोदरक्षि श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर प्रभुपाद की। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की। नामाचार्य शिल हरदास ठाकुर की। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड श्री गिरि गोवर्धन की। ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की। गंगा माई जमुना माई की। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की। कलियुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की। श्रील प्रभुपाद ट्रांसलेंडल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू असेंबल डिवोटीज। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू असेंबल डिवोटीज। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू असेंबल डिवोटीज। All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Krishna. It's our great fortune today that we have His Grace Gauranga Prabhu with us. He's from Chowpatty Temple, India, Mumbai. Most of us actually don't need introduction to Gauranga Prabhu. He has been a celibate monk for over 30 years and he is well known for his deep Shastric knowledge. Prabhuji is the director of Govardhan Eco Village, which has won so many international awards. Prabhuji is also the co-president of ISKCON Chowpatty Temple. and he has held several leadership positions within ISKCON and outside of ISKCON. He's also an author, an influencer on social media, and a traveling preacher. So again, we are very fortunate that we have him with us here. So without further much ado, please welcome him, and we'll give the mic to him. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshi Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I am honored to be here speaking in front of you at the Rukmini Dwarkadish Mandir, one of Srila Prabhupada's original temples created in the late 60s, the Western World Headquarters, as Srila Prabhupada would call it, and also very celebrated for being responsible for printing and publishing and distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. And over the last 56 years, even the government of India recently recognized ISKCON's contribution in distributing more than 560 million pieces of literature connected to the Srimad Bhagavad Gita all over the world. And more specifically, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita was a book which was embedded in Bengali. There were other versions of Srimad Bhagavatam and commentaries in other sampradayas which were available, maybe in vernacular languages, may not be in English. But as far as Chaitanya Charitamrita was concerned, that remained a mystery. And it was right here that His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada spent significant energy in printing the last part, which was the major chunk of the Chaitanya Charitamrita production. The coordination was done right here, and we are extremely grateful to all of those who were responsible for this. And so I am going to speak from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travel to Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas on January the 14th, 1510, and immediately set off for Vrindavan. His main purpose of taking sannyas was to settle in Vrindavan and do bhajan. But then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was diverted by Nityananda Prabhu to come to Bengal, and there he met the Navadvip Vasis, including Sachimata. And Sachimata requested Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not to stay in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu also did not want to stay in Navadvip, because he told Sachimata that people will criticize if after sannyas I stay with you. So there was a point of contention, and then finally there was a compromise. And dialogue is all about how two people take step back and agree on a compromise. So the place chosen as a compromise was Jagannath Puri. And Lord Chaitanya traveled from there. In the month of February, he came to Jagannath Puri. In the month of March, he had a debate with Sarabhom Bhattacharya, convinced him about pure bhakti, brought him into the fold of pure devotional service. In the month of April, Lord Chaitanya took permission of his devotees to go to South India, travel, preach, spread the Harinam Sankirtan. Kanchana sadrisha deha aruna basan pulaka ashru kampasveda tahate bhushan. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi. He was not having any precious ornaments and jewels. He was wearing simple saffron colored clothes, which was the color of the early morning rising sun. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's effulgence was golden, and it attracted the hearts of all the souls who saw him. And the two most powerful weapons Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had was his beauty and his bliss. And so, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, taking permission of the devotees in Jagannath Puri, first comes to Alarnath, where he inaugurates the Harinam. And it is described that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ornaments were his symptoms of ecstasy. And then as Mahaprabhu inaugurates his Harinam Sankirtan, Kehana che keha gaye Sri Krishna Gopal Premete bhasil loka stri briddha abal. All categories of people were attracted and enchanted to be participants in this Harinam Sankirtan, irrespective of their social status, irrespective of any other consideration. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, along with one associate, Kal Krishnadas, proceeds towards South India. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita Kaviraj Goswami describes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's chanting of the holy name was like that of a roar of a maddened lion in a forest. Mattasim pray prabhu korila gaman prema beshe jai kori nama sankirtan. And as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did this sankirtan, he traveled to all the holy places, took darshan of beautiful deities in temples all across South India. And for a period of 2 years, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling, preaching, converting people whom he met into lovers of Krishna simply by his embrace. And then he returned back to Jagannath Puri by 1512, just before Rath Yatra. And the devotees from Bengal came and met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they had an ecstatic Rath Yatra festival. And after the Rath Yatra festival, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his request that he wishes to go and travel to Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's request was responded to by the devotees by saying that Rath Yatra is over, after this Janmashtami will come. So you please stay back for Janmashtami. When Janmashtami was over, they made a proposal that Radhashtami is coming. And when Radhashtami was over, they said Dashara is coming. When Vijayadashami was over, they proposed Kartik Mas is coming. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was delayed by not just 1 year, but by 2 years. So by the time Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was like 1514, 2 years after he returned back from South India, and Lord Chaitanya was still in Jagannath Puri and still unable to fulfill his desire of going to Sri Vrindavan Dham. So it is at this moment that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requests his most intimate associate, Sarabhom Bhattacharya and Ramananda Rai. And it is said here, Yadyapi swatantra prabhu nohe nivaran bhakta ichha vina prabhu no kore gaman. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showcasing that what is the qualification to enter into the mood of Vrindavan. Vrindavan is not simply a physical location, but Vrindavan is a spiritual plane where a soul's desire is in perfect synergy with Krishna's desire. To find such consonance between Krishna's desires and our desire is extremely difficult, because what comes in the way is the false ego. And that false ego makes it difficult to find harmony with another desire of anybody else, what to speak of the supreme will. And therefore the ego is described as madhu klibam cha madhvike krite karma shubha shubhe bhaktanam karmanam chaiva sudanam madhusudanam. One of Krishna's names is Madhusudan, and Madhu refers to honey. So it is said that the ego and the honey both have two things in common. Ego, just like honey, is sweet, and the ego, just like honey, is also intoxicating. And therefore, when one is overwhelmed by the influence of this false ego, one gets intoxicated, and it becomes difficult to actually see from the core of one's heart what exactly is the will of the Lord. And to the extent one's false ego grows, to that extent it becomes impossible to accept any dissent to one's own proposal and desire. And the extreme kind of ego was demonstrated by Hiranyakashipu, who felt that he is the center of the whole universe. And only his son was the one who spoke against him. And Hiranyakashipu could not tolerate that. And so Hiranyakashipu's ego was such that it could not be destroyed. The ego cannot be destroyed outside the house or inside the house. The ego cannot be destroyed in the sky or on the ground. The ego cannot be destroyed in the day and night. The ego cannot be destroyed by any weapons, living or dead. The ego cannot be destroyed by any of the species of life created. And therefore, to destroy that false ego, Lord personally manifested in the form of Lord Nrsimhadev. Jai Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki. And then finally, when Lord Nrsimha appeared, Bhagavatam describes Satyam Vidhatum Nijabhritya Bhashitam Vyaptim Cha Bhuteshu Akileshu Jatman. He appeared on the prayer of Prahlad Maharaj to protect Prahlad and to destroy the false ego. And he ripped apart Hiranyakashipu. And this beautiful picture, which has been painted by the BBT artists, in our Bhaktivedanta hospital, it was placed in the operation theatre. And one patient who was not familiar with Krishna consciousness, just before going into anesthesia, saw this. He got a shock of his life. He asked the doctor, who was a devotee, "What is this?" And the doctor thought this is a good opportunity to communicate the message. And he looked at the painting and looked at the patient and said, "This is the first surgery in history." And the patient looked again at the painting and looked at the doctor and said, "Doctor, what was the result of that surgery?" And the doctor said, "Operation was successful, patient was liberated." So therefore, Vrindavan is a place where Brajavasis are those whose response to Krishna's will is instant. There is no time lapse between Krishna's making a request and the Brajavasis responding to that request. The Brajavasis will dance in perfect tune with Krishna's will. And that dance of harmony is the rasa dance. And therefore the word vraja means movement. And brajavasis means those who are extremely responsive in moving their will, their desire, their opinions, their thought process, their attitudes, their perspectives in perfect harmony with Krishna's will. They are extremely flexible and supple as far as their response is concerned. So therefore, Bhakti Yoga focuses on making one's will and desire flexible. That is the speciality of this yoga. And that's how it is different from Ashtanga Yoga. And that's why in the Bhakti tradition, Vrindavan becomes the place to go and seek the blessings of those who have accomplished perfection in Bhakti Yoga. So therefore Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to demonstrate the importance of visiting Vrindavan. But since Vrindavan is the place of being in perfect harmony with Krishna's will, and Krishna's will is represented by the devotees, so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also demonstrated that without being in harmony with the devotee's will, we cannot expect to be in harmony with Krishna's will. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although intensely and genuinely and authentically desiring to travel to Vrindavan at the earliest, allowed himself to be bound by the affectionate refusals of the devotees and waited patiently, tolerantly, before the heartfelt blessings of the devotees came. And so, this verse demonstrates that Yadyapi Swatantra Prabhu. Chaitanya Charitamrita is describing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Swatantra, independent. The Supreme Lord is independent. He can do whatever he likes. When he likes, he moves the entire creation. Yadyapi Swatantra Prabhu Nahe Nivaran, nobody can stop him, nobody can control him. Even the 330 million demigods place their heads in submission to him. He moves the universe. But he allowed himself to be controlled and bound by his devotees' desire. Bhakta Ichha Prabhu Kahe. He allowed those devotees' desire to control his movement. Bhakta Ichha Vina Prabhu Nokore Gaman. And he did not start off his travel to Vrindavan till the devotees in Puri agreed to bless him to do so. And so, Sarabhaum Bhattacharya and Ramananda Rai, they confer with each other and confer with all the devotees, and finally they agree that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can travel, and they give him permission. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decides to travel from Jagannath Puri first to Bengal, and via Bengal he wants to go to Vrindavan. So Rath Yatra of 1514 is over, then the Navaratri comes and the Dashara happens. Vijay Dashami of 1514 is when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decides to begin his journey towards Bengal. He starts off and hundreds of devotees follow him. They cannot bear separation from Lord Chaitanya. They want to come with him. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with all these devotees, travel from Jagannath Puri first to Bhuvaneshwar. Then he goes to Katak. And in Katak, Prataprudra Maharaj is there with all of his associates. And Prataprudra Maharaj is the king Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraces the king and gives him pure love. And the king feels totally blessed to receive Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy and grace. And various family members of Prataprudra Maharaj are standing on top of the palace, and Lord Chaitanya, simply by his glance, he delivers all of them, transforms their heart, and they start crying in ecstasy and love of God. So Kaviraj Goswami is raising a point that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Prataprudra, but for other devotees he did not embrace them, he simply glanced upon them. How did that transformation happen? And he says, Emana kripalu nahi shuni tribhuvane, Krishna prema hoye jara durdarshane. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had the power to transform the devotees' hearts simply by his glance. By that glance of mercy, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered all of them. And then from there, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu travels from Cuttack and comes to Jajpur. And Jajpur is the place where Gadadhar Pandit, who is non-different from Srimati Radharani, he is requesting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to travel further. So Gadadhar Pandit had been given instruction by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to stay in Jagannath Puri. He had been given instruction to worship the deities of Tota Gopinath. But the prospect of not being in association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was extremely difficult for Gadadhar Pandit to tolerate. He just felt that I cannot survive without Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association. So he traveled with Lord Chaitanya, breaking his vow of Kshetra Sannyas, of being within Puri, and overlooking the instruction of service which had been given to him to serve Tota Gopinath. So many times we experience a tug of war between what we feel inspired by versus what is being instructed to us. So through Gadadhar Pandit, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is demonstrating this internal tug of war between inspiration and instruction. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turns to Gadadhar Pandit and he says, Gadadhar, you were supposed to be in Puri. I see that you have come all the way here. I think you should go back and follow the instruction which I have given of worshipping Tota Gopinath and fulfill your vow of Kshetra Sannyas and be in Puri. So when Gadadhar Pandit hears this, he says, Pandit kahe तुम यहाँ से नीलाचल क्षेत्र संन्यास मोरा जाऊ कर सातल. Gadadhar Pandit says, my dear Lord, what you are saying is true, but I have another point. So Gadadhar Pandit is arguing and he is saying, my dear Lord, wherever your lotus feet are there, that is Puri. And as far as my vow of Kshetra Sannyas, of being in Puri, is concerned, let it go to hell. As long as you are there, your feet are there, my opportunity to serve you are there. What else matters? So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears this and he is not happy. And he says, no, you should go back and see how many people will criticize that you are not fulfilling your vow and duties. He said, Gadadhar Pandit says, I have one more idea. You go straight, I will come by the other route. I will join you in Bengal directly. So nobody can accuse you that you have encouraged me to leave Seva. I take full responsibility for breaking my vow and I'll take full responsibility for deviating from my service. What do you say? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, absolutely nonsense. Go back immediately. And he says, Pratigya seva chadibe e tomar uddesh se siddha hoila chadi aila duradesh. Lord Chaitanya says a devotee has only two assets. One is his vow, and second is his service. If the vow and the service both are lost, what else remains? Some devotees in the early days told Srila Prabhupada that there is a nightclub here which opens at 9 o'clock at night and is active all through the night. It's a great place for book distribution. We are thinking of going there. What do you say? Prabhupada said, you may go there, make sure you come back also. So once we have taken certain vows, then we are bound by those vows. So Lord Chaitanya is telling Gadadhar Pandit, you have taken a vow of staying in Jagannath Puri, you have to stay there. You have to serve Tota Gopinath. Pratigya, Seva, both are extremely important. And we have to do that at any cost. And allow the instructions to rule over us so that we can actually experience the taste of bhakti. Prabhupada was in Jagannath Puri. He was in Bhubaneswar. Srila Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj was at that time translating Srimad Bhagavatam from English to Udiya. So Prabhupada asked Srila Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj, how is the progress of the translation? He said, progress is very slow. Prabhupada said, why is it slow? He said, because I have also got to manage this place. Prabhupada said, anybody can manage, but nobody can translate. He said, but there is nobody in this temple. I am the only resident. I am also the president, I am the resident. So how we will get anybody else? So Prabhupada saw there was one devotee who had just come as traveling preacher, and he was leaving the next day for New York, and he was just passing by. Prabhupada said, we will make him the manager. So Gaur Govind Maharaj said, I can't tell him that. You have to tell him, because he already has plans for tomorrow. He's flying back to New York. So Prabhupada called him and he said that I have a service for you. And this devotee said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, what is the seva? Prabhupada said, I want you to stay back and manage this place in Bhubaneswar. He got total shock. He says, Prabhupada, the weather in India doesn't suit me. Prabhupada said, only when you stay longer time it will suit you. So he thought for some time and he had to think of another reason. He said, Prabhupada, the food, I'm not able to digest the food here in India. Prabhupada said, I'll write down what to eat, what not to eat, follow it nicely, everything will be digested. Second argument also shot down. So he started scratching his head and he said, Prabhupada, there is a department in New York which has been started just for me. I have to take over it. Prabhupada said, I will delegate it to someone else. You stay back. Then this devotee thought for some time and he thought he has to say something serious. And said, Prabhupada, I am not able to get along with the local GBC. Prabhupada said, today only I changed the GBC. Now he had no more arguments. And then finally he thought, okay, let me try one Brahmastra, the final argument. And he said, Prabhupada, morning till night there is so much of service here, I am not able to complete my 16 rounds. At least if I go to New York, I can chant peacefully. Prabhupada said, if you are busy morning till night thinking about Krishna, even if you don't chant, that is fine. He said, oh my God, I didn't expect this. What should I do, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, I already told you, stay back and manage this place. So when we perform sadhana bhakti, sadhana means practice. And so, it is very, very important to practice the process of following the vows and the instructions for service. So that's what Kaviraj Goswami says. Prabhu lagi dharma karma chhade bhakta gana bhakta dharma hani prabhu na hoye sahan. The devotees were willing to give up their vows and give up their service just so that they can be with Lord Chaitanya. Because that was the most inspiring thing for them. Prabhu lagi dharma karma chhade. But bhakta dharma hani prabhu na hoye sahan. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could not tolerate whimsical abandoning of duties in Krishna consciousness. He wanted the devotees to experience the empowerment which follows the practice of sincerity and submission. He wanted them to taste that. One devotee told Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada saw this devotee sitting in Vrindavan for a long time. Prabhupada said, you are in Vrindavan for a long time, I think you should start preaching. He said, Prabhupada, I am enjoying in Vrindavan. Prabhupada said, our process is not to enjoy. Our process is you serve and give enjoyment. So better you start preaching. He looked at Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, where will I go? What do you think? Where should I go? Prabhupada said, why don't you go to Sri Lanka? Nobody has gone there. It is not too far. Go to Sri Lanka and preach. He didn't like the idea. He looked at Prabhupada and made an excuse. Prabhupada, Sri Lanka is a very small country. Prabhupada said, okay, then go to Pakistan. He thought for some time. He said, Sri Lanka is better. And then he went to Sri Lanka. And then he met, some leaders of the Rationalist Association. And there was like a famous debate. And he actually gave very solid arguments and defended Srila Prabhupada's teachings expertly. And later it was published in, Life Comes from Life also. So he said, if we simply follow the process and sincerely practice the process and be dutiful, then Krishna's grace also follows in inconceivable ways. And therefore, some of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples mentioned that they were not Sanskrit scholars, they were not very learned in the scriptures. But Prabhupada said, your qualification is whatever I am speaking, you are repeating. And that gives tremendous empowerment. Prabhupada was with some devotees in Amritsar in India. And it was a sadhu sammelan, which was like a conference of all experienced spiritualists from different organizations. It was a big program. Thousands of people had gathered. And Srila Prabhupada was with some of his disciples who were all in their early 20s. And Prabhupada heard the speeches of some of the other people, and most of them were speaking about how everything is one, everything is one. And Prabhupada just got up and started walking out. So his disciple was very young, was a little bewildered. He said to Prabhupada, you are the next speaker. Where are you going? Prabhupada said, I think the level at which they are speaking, you are sufficient to speak. Even you can represent. So he got a shock of his life, because it was like an august assembly of thousands of spiritualists who had gathered there, and he was thinking, everybody was in their 60s and 70s, and he was like a 23-year-old devotee. So he came to the mic and he said, I hear that everybody is saying Lord does not have a form, everything is one. But my question to you is, Rasgulla is a sweet. Can Rasgulla the sweet be same as stool on the street? And when he said that, there was a gasp of shock from the audience. They got totally bewildered by this example. And they came to Srila Prabhupada complaining. And they started complaining to Prabhupada, your disciple is telling us to eat stool on the street. Prabhupada called this devotee and he said, did you say like that? He says, no Prabhupada, I was just giving an analogy to show how the soul and the Supreme Soul are different. They are not same. And I said, how Rasgulla is a sweet, it is different from, stool on the street. So Prabhupada turned to the other spiritualists who had come to complain. And Prabhupada said, my American disciples, they give very creative examples. So, don't mind, they are very young. So they all left. And then after they left, Prabhupada turned to this devotee and said, what was that example? Rasgulla, the sweet, and stool on the street? Excellent example. And so Srila Prabhupada said, a little bit of exposure to the words of the Lord as they have been spoken, they actually reveal the deepest mysteries of the Vedic literatures. And that's the power of hearing in parampara. Hearing in the parampara has that potency, because you get that touch instantly. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at this point leaves Gadadhar Pandit behind, goes ahead, and then he comes to the Orissa-Bengal border. And then there is this news that on the other side there is a governor who is totally against, the principles which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is following. And so Prataparudra Maharaj associate, he comes and offers that I will go and broker a deal so that there is a safe passage. So the political climate at that time was so uncertain that even to go from Orissa to Bengal, you needed special agreements. So by the time Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu settled there on this side of the Orissa border, and on the other side, this governor heard Sankirtan sounds. He sent his spy to check out what's going on. The spy came, went back and reported to the governor. And while reporting to the governor about Lord Chaitanya, the spy also started dancing in ecstasy. And he started doing kirtan. So the governor got bewildered. And the governor said, I sent you to spy. You also started chanting. So looks like that person is very powerful. I have a desire to go and meet him. So he sent his secretary to make an offer to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When that secretary came and saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that secretary became ecstatic and started singing the glories of the Lord. So when Prataparudra Maharaj's assistant, who was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's security, he saw this, he got bewildered. And then he said, Shuni Mahapatra kohe hoya vismay madhyapa yavanirachita aicheke korai. And he says, how can this happen? This person is addicted to being intoxicated and following all kinds of other habits. How can he develop such symptoms of ecstasy? And then he says, Apane Mahaprabhu tare kripa drishti kori darshana smarana jara jagata tarani. And he says, that is the power of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's glance. Simply by the power of his glance, he has become transformed. So Srila Prabhupada writes that one may think, oh, Lord Chaitanya came 500 years back. Now, we do not have the luxury of his glance. He says, no. When you come to the temple and take darshan of Sri Sri Gaur Nitai, the glance of Sri Sri Gaur Nitai has the same effect. And that transcendental glance has a transformative effect on our heart. And therefore, when we come to the temple and take darshan of the deities, two things happen. Chandrika Vishadasmerai Sa Aruna Apanga Vekshitai Swakarthanam Ivaraja Sattvabhyam Srishtipalaka. When the deity's glance falls upon us, first desire to practice devotional service, desire to serve the Lord manifests. The desire manifests simply by when the Lord's darshan falls upon us, when the Lord's glance falls upon us. And all of us have experienced when we come to the temple, when we associate, when we take darshan, that darshan has a transformative effect. It creates some change. And everybody knows that when you go to a temple, there is some change you feel. It's a different energy, right? I was trying to give, prasadam to one young college student, and he was refusing. No. I said, Arey, you're the first guy who's refusing prasad. What is the problem? Why you're refusing? He said, no, I'm afraid to eat this from your hands. I said, why? Why are you afraid? He says, I'm afraid if I take this prasad, my hairstyle will become like yours. I said, no, it is not like that. By practicing this process, your habits will transform. Your mind will transform. And your heart will become free from anxiety and fear. Because the cause of all fear is change. The prospect of change creates fear and anxiety in our heart. And therefore, spiritual process is how we can get rooted to that which does not change, so that we can cope with all changes which may happen in our lives. So that's the idea about why we actually come to the temple, get connected and practice this process. And so here it is said that this secretary was in bliss, seeing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's powerful impact simply with his glance on this secretary who had come from the governor. And this secretary goes and brings the governor. The governor comes and he wears the dress of a Vaishnava and falls at the feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu embraces him. And as soon as he embraces him, he becomes filled with ecstasy. And he starts praying. Adhama yavana kule kena janma hoila, vidhi more hindu kule kena na janmaila. Why I did not get your association before? Why I am getting your association so late? If I had your association much before, my heart would have transformed long time back. And therefore many times we feel a sense of regret when there is a delay in coming to the right conclusion. And here Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mercifully transforming him, and he says, Chandala pavitra jara Shri Nama Shravane Hena tomar e jiva paila darshane. And he says, anyone who takes darshan of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, immediately the desire to chant the holy names arise in their heart. And their heart transforms. And they begin chanting the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his grace in Bengal, transformed the lives of two of the most sinful people, Jagai and Madhai, simply by his grace and his mercy. And therefore Rupa and Sanatan say, Jagai Madhai hoite koti koti gun, Adhama patita prabhu ami duijan. We are more sinful than Jagai and Madhai. So Jagai and Madhai represent the extent to which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can create transformation. So when I first heard this pastime of Jagai and Madhai, how they were delivered by Lord Chaitanya, and by hearing about their deliverance, whole of Bengal got delivered, I got really excited. And I thought this is a great chance for me to transform my whole hostel in my college. So I thought, let me bring, one of the most intoxicated person from my hostel who drinks day and night. And if he becomes transformed, whole hostel will become impressed with me. And they will all start chanting Hare Krishna. So I went to this friend of mine. Day and night he would be drinking. He looked at me and he was already drunk when I approached him. And he said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I have a proposal." He said, "What?" I said, "This Saturday you should come with me for a program." He said, "What program?" I said, "Bhagavad Gita lecture." He looked at me and said, "Are you drunk? Whom are you inviting? Me? You don't know my background? How is it possible for me to attend spiritual discourses?" I said, "Baba, everyone has a future. You can always change." So he said, "Okay, let me think about it. If I come, I will come with the bottle of liquor. Will they allow to sit in the lecture of Bhagavad Gita if I come with this liquor bottle? What do you say?" He thought I'll leave him. But that was the first person I invited for a program. So I also had a strong ego. So I did not want to accept defeat. So I thought I'll call the temple and ask that, do you allow people to come for lecture with bottle? So then I thought they will tell me, you also don't come. So I thought, let me bear the risk. I said, you come, no problem. Bottle, no bottle, you come. So that day morning he came. He had a small bottle with him. He had finished half of it. And then, as we were about to enter the room for the lecture, I asked him, "You have brought the bottle till here. Don't take it inside. Keep it above the door here, on the ledge." He looked at me and said, "The ISKCON fellows won't drink it, no?" I said, "Arey Baba, they are so austere. They don't drink tea and coffee also." Then I said, "I have a condition. You will not open your mouth, because the smell will come. And the preacher may chastise me, 'Whom have you brought?'" So he said, "Okay, I'll remain quiet." So he was sitting there quietly. And this devotee who had come to preach looked at him and said, "What is your name?" I was sitting there, I gave the answer. The preacher looked at him again. "Which branch are you in?" I gave the answer. "Which year you are in?" I gave the answer. He was wondering, I am asking him the question, why is he giving the answer? I said, "My friend is very shy, So in the middle of the lecture, he kind of nodded like this and told me, "How long will he continue speaking?" I said, "You will get the food only at the end. We have to wait till then." So he got up in the middle of the lecture, went out, finished the bottle, and came in. At the end, the preacher who was there, he said, "Do you want beads to chant?" He said, "Yes, yes." And he took the beads. I said, "Why are you taking the beads? You're not going to chant." He put the beads around his neck and said, "I'm looking smart. So I like the beads." So he took the beads with him, went to the hostel. He had beads in one hand, bottle in another hand. He said, "I have joined ISKCON." And it took me like 1 week to take the beads back. So, to transform one's way of thinking, acting, doing habits, performing habits in a certain way is one of the most difficult things. And one cannot accomplish it on one's own strength. It is not possible. So here, the point being underscored is that when we get spiritual power and transcendental strength, that transcendental strength gives us the ability to say no to various temptations. तबे महाप्रभु तारे कृपा दृष्टि कोरी, आश्वासिया को हे तुमी कह कृष्ण होरी. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked at him and said, please chant the holy names. And then he completely transformed by chanting the names of Krishna. And as soon as he started chanting, there was a transformation. And so the next question arises. I start chanting. Then I have a doubt. Is the chanting transforming me? How do I know that the chanting is actually transforming me? So the next verse addresses. This governor speaks to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sei kohe jari yadi kori angikar ek agya deha seva kori je tomar. So he says that if you accept me, my dear Lord, then you give me some seva. Ek agya deha seva kori je tomar. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, the impact and effect of chanting is proved by the uprising of a genuine desire to serve. Distraction in chanting is caused by a difference between our intention and our action. When we chant, the intention we are expressing is, please engage me in service. But when the service actually comes, we say, please engage him in your service. Please engage her in your service. Or did I actually ask for service? I don't remember. So Krishna gets bewildered. And I thought I heard you for 2 hours. Please engage, please engage. So therefore when we pray to Krishna and chant, we think Krishna will give service. Yes, he gives service through devotees. So therefore, when there is pure intention, then there will be pure inspiration. When the intention and inspiration are aligned, then there is integrity. With proper integrity, inspiration and intention, our proper devotional spiritual intelligence arises by which we make the right choices. And then we actually are able to have proper impact because we add intensity to this mix. So without intention, without inspiration, without intelligence, without integrity, without intensity, there cannot be any impact. So therefore, here this governor is praying, please engage me in your service. And then he says, Go Brahmana Vaishnava Himsa Koryachi Apar Sei Papa Hoite Mora Hauka Nistar. He says, I have committed many sins. And Prabhupada mentions there are 2 types of sins. One is, violence towards other creatures. And second is insulting devotees. That is also violence. So we have to be free from these tendencies. And then Lord Chaitanya finally reaches Bengal. And in Bengal he meets Rupa and Sanatan for the first time in Ramkeli. Sanatan Goswami looks at Lord Chaitanya followed by millions of people and he says, my dear Lord, although I am meeting you for the first time and it may not be proper, but I have to reveal to you that it is not the right etiquette to travel to Vrindavan with such millions of people. Vrindavan is a place of absorption. Vrindavan is a place of contemplation. Vrindavan is a place when one is completely invested in thinking about how to serve Krishna every moment. Durlabha durgama sei nirjana Vrindavan ekaki jaiba kiba sange ekajan. Vrindavan is a very rare place. It is a very exalted plane. Please go alone, not with such crowds. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been waiting from the moment he took sannyas in 1510 to go to Vrindavan. And with great difficulty, he has managed to leave for Vrindavan 4 years later. And after reaching Bengal, he is about to depart for Vrindavan from Bengal. Sanatan Goswami is giving him an alternative idea and not giving him permission and blessings to go further. So Lord Chaitanya could have told him, hey Sanatan, I am meeting you first time. Don't give me advice on day one. And what do you know about my plans? You know how much I have been dreaming for 4 years and saying, don't go. If you don't want to come, don't come. I am going. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have just left. But he returns back before Rath Yatra of 1515, back to Jagannath Puri. And the devotees are bewildered. You came back? And Lord Chaitanya looks at Gadadhar Pandit and says, I offended Gadadhar Pandit and did not allow him to come with me, so I did not get his full blessings. Because I did not get his full blessings, Krishna did not allow me to go to Vrindavan. And again he spends the Chaturmas. And then on Dashera of 1515, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Balabhadra Bhattacharya leaves for Vrindavan via the uncertain path of Jharikhand forest. And only with one associate. And as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu travels through that path, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells his associate, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, because Balabhadra Bhattacharya sees lions and tigers and elephants. So this was not like the regular path. Externally it was the more difficult path. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, happiness and distress is not a matter of whether you are able to fulfill your plan. The difference between success and happiness is success is to get what you like, and happiness is to like what you get. And so he says, happiness is not just getting what you like, but happiness is how we are able to align our will with the Lord's will and accept that will. And so Mahaprabhu doesn't say, Sanatan Goswami spoilt my plans. Mahaprabhu says, Sanatan Mukhe Krishna Ama Shikhaila. Through Sanatan Goswami, Krishna has revealed that this is a better place. This is the better way to go. And Lord Chaitanya comes to Vrindavan. Finally, on Kartik Purnima, the last day of Kartik in 1515, spends 2 months in ecstasy. In 2 months, Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy is growing, but his servant, Balabhadra Bhattacharya's anxiety is growing. Because he is not able to handle the millions of people, approaching Lord Chaitanya. So he comes to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he says, my dear Lord, my mind is in anxiety serving you in Vrindavan. Early in the morning, people come searching for you. You are away in the forest. They come and eat my head. Pratah kale loke aise tomare na paye, tomare na paye loka mora matha khaye. They come and eat my head. Where is Lord Chaitanya? You are kind of hiding him and this and that. They start chastising me. Udvigna hoila prana sohite na pari. Here is Balabhadra Bhattacharya directly with bliss personified. Lord Chaitanya in Vrindavan, but in total anxiety. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have also told Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who are you to tell me? First of all, I never wanted you to come with me. The devotees in Puri forced you upon me. And now you are telling me you are not liking it here. So you go. I continue to stay. I relieve you. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have said that. But again, at the beginning, before beginning the journey, what was the underlying principle for Lord Chaitanya to start the journey? Bhakta Ichha. The desire of the devotee. To begin the journey, after coming to Bengal, again Sanatan Goswami's Ichha, Bhakta Ichha. He made a U-turn, came back. Again, finally he has reached Vrindavan, he wants to stay on. But now Balabhadra Bhattacharya is saying, let us leave Vrindavan. I can't handle the anxiety here. Jadyapi Vrindavan tyage nahi prabhurman, bhakta ichha purite kohe madhur vachan. Again, the recurring theme, Bhakta Ichha. What is Mahaprabhu's desire? To stay on in Vrindavan. Yadyapi Vrindavan tyage nahi prabhurman. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not want to leave Vrindavan at any cost. Bhakta Ichha Purite. In order to fulfill his devotee's desire, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, okay, Balabhadra, wherever you want to take me, you take me. And we will go there. And so Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed only for those 2 months in Vrindavan in the year 1515, November and December. And by January he had already come to Prayag for the Magh Mela. So this is, the beautiful journey of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Jagannath Puri, traveling all the way to come to Sri Vrindavan Dham. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is revealing through his brilliant example how the core principle in devotional service is we can be a humble servant and be dependent on the desire and the will of the devotees. And that utter helpless dependence on the devotees and their desire and their pleasure is what nourishes the seed of devotion in the heart, Bhakti Lata Bij. And therefore, although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas simply for the reason of settling in Vrindavan Dham, he changed all his plans so that he can be fulfilling the devotee's desire. So thank you very much for coming this evening and being part of this Chaitanya Charitamrita Katha. Hare Krishna.